Namaste people. So today in this video we're going to see how to have a clean architecture for Firebase authentication using Riverpod. Riverpod is the newest package by the creator or provider Remy Rouslet, and it is like an abstraction over provider as well, and it reduces a lot of boilerplate code, still maintaining a lot of functionality and ease of use. So in this video we're going to connect it to Firebase, but I've already done that for you since most of you would already be knowing how to do that. If you don't, I've already talked about it in my previous video, so you can just have a look at the pop-up right above and you can go to that and check how to connect your Fire application with Firebase. For now, I've already made a Firebase database, Firebase console application, as you can see right here, and I've connected it to my application right here. And I will just show you the library structure that I have, or the file structure. So in my library, in my lib folder, I have the components, the models, providers, services, and views. So within views, of course, I have a login page which has nothing but two text fields and a raise button. So for email and password, and then a button for sign in. I have a home page where I just have a text written in its home page and a button to sign out. So we'll be using just these two pages to have an architecture and just show you how you can use Riverpod to simplify your authentication architecture and make it very simple for any scalability operations later. So let's get into it. First of all, we need to get the packages for this. I've already gotten the Firebase core. We'll get Firebase Auth and we'll get Riverpod. Let's get Firebase Auth first. I'll go to my pugspec.yaml file. I'll put it right about here. As you can see, I've already put my Firebase core in because I already connected it with Firebase. Then I will also need my Flutter Riverpod. So when using Riverpod, a little bit of knowledge of provider is, I would not say necessary, but it would be preferable. If you don't, you can still understand it, but you will have to go through a little bit of provider as well to know what kind of providers are really there, because it's doing nothing but it's simplifying the code for provider itself. So reducing the boilerplate code. So I have all my dependencies right here. I will, yeah, so pubget is running. Meanwhile, I will close my application. Before that, I'll show you. So this is how the login page will look. Very simple for this video. I will keep it simplified only. Yeah, now that we have our packages, let's run it again and let's start coding. Right, so I have recompiled the application. It's running now. Now we can start with the authentication service. And for the authentication service, we will first need to have a helper class. I will make that in services. So let's make a new file and call it auth services. And let's have a class name authentication service. So we'll need a final variable of Firebase auth, and let's make it a private variable, right? Let's have a getter to it. Let's not have a getter. Let's get it through the constructor. So this would be better. Yeah, this is better. Now let's have a stream of type user, which is basically a Firebase user, nothing else. And let's name it auth state change. and it will be bound to auth state changes. So whenever the authentication state changes from a logged in user to null, or basically null actually means logged out, so this will give us a stream of that, and we can check this in an application, automatically log out and redirect to the login page if the user has logged out. Right, now we will need two functions, actually three. So one, sign in, sign up, and log out. So let's create those will be of type future and return void. Let's create the first one called sign in. Let's have name variables, and name variable will be email and password. Actually, let's just do one thing, make it a string. We can return successful or not successful, that is also okay. We'll do all of this in try catch block. It's very important to do it in try catch block to catch the exception, a particular exception that comes with Firebase auth, and that exception is on Firebase auth exception, as you can see. So we will catch this, and then we will return something like, let's just return the message, and here we will return login successful. Okay, one thing I forgot, this is an async function, right? And now here we will use the Firebase auth variable and sign in with email and password. We'll use email and password for this tutorial, so the names are basically the same. Okay, I did a mistake here a little bit, so this will be string. I don't want it as this because I've not made it a class variable, right? So this works, I guess. And this is the sign in. The sign up function will be very similar, there is no real difference, and we have to await this function as well. So we'll just copy and paste this. The function will now be called sign up, and the function here will be, it changed names in the recent patch, not actually a recent patch, a little older patch, to create user with email and password. And the third one will be for logout. So future will return a void logout. It will be an async function, of course. And it will be called sign out. Okay, let's just change the name and call it sign out in itself. Right. So we're done with our authentication service class. So this is the class that we will need actually, and let's just make a provider to get this, right? So we'll go in provider and make a file called auth providers. Okay, I think I forgot one thing there, right? So in authentication services, I had to change this, sign up successful. So So here first we will need the Firebase instance, of course. So for that also I will use a provider only. Let's have a final variable, and let's give it Firebase Auth provider. Let's give it a name of this, and it will be a normal provider which will return a Firebase Auth instance, and here we'll have an anonymous function, and this will return Firebase Auth dot instance. And let's just call this one in. Right. So now we have this. Now we can make a final function to get the authentication services. So we'll call it auth services provider, and it will be again a normal provider which will return a user which is a Firebase user. Again, it will have an anonymous function. It will return, actually we'll do this in the next one. Let's just have it return the authentication service object, and here we have to provide this Firebase auth provider. So we can provide that using ref and read, and then we'll give the Firebase auth provider the name. Right. So this is for the services. So using this, we can call in our functions, the function of sign up, sign in, and as well as sign out as well. So you can do that, and we can have, actually let's have a stream provider, and what the stream provider will provide is the authentication state of the application, so of the user actually. So if a person is signed in or signed out, it will be stream variable, and that will actually, the stream variable or the stream will allow us to actually dynamically change our screen from home page to login page depending on if the person has logged out or not, or if he has signed in or not. So let's make an auth state provider which will be a stream provider. Okay, and here it will be ref, of course, again an anonymous function, and here we will return. So we will have to watch, right? You have to watch the auth services. We have to watch the auth services provider, and from that we have to get the auth state change. So this, as you remember, will return a stream of user which is a Firebase user. So we are done with the providers as well. Now we can start to implement the providers in the application. So let's just go to the main class where I've done nothing but just initialize the Flutter widget binding, and then to use the provider, the Riverpod providers, we have to wrap the widget of the root widget in a provider scope. And that's about it for the setup. We don't actually have to do anything else. That's it. And now we can just start using it itself. So now it will initialize the application, as you will already know with the new syntax. And when this connection state is done, we will have to decide what to call. So we have to call the login page, or the home page, depending on if the person is signed in or not, right? So we will, for that we'll make a separate stateless widget, and let's call it auth checker. It will check if there is auth, and we will return it here. Right? So now here we can do two things. In the normal syntax of provider, what we would do, we would have a consumer here above the container or the scaffold, and then we will check the providers. But Riverpod actually simplifies it for us and makes one thing possible. So we can make this stateless widget as a consumer widget. As you can see, we have a consumer widget. We can just add a scope reader here. I will call it watch, right? And then we don't need to have a consumer widget. So what the advantage of this is, it basically removes a one level of nesting. So you have one level less of nesting, and that is very useful in the applications which have, again, a higher level of nesting, or bigger applications, of course. So here we'll have to do two things. First, we have to check the authentication state. So for authentication state, we'll have to make a variable. Let's call it auth state, and that will be, we are using the scope reader, which we name watch. We will just give the name of the provider. And what did we name the provider? Auth services provider. Or actually, we don't need the auth service provider, we need the auth state provider. We just need the state right now. Right? So what we can do here is we can return auth state dot when. So when we have data, we will have the value as well. Oh no, I am very bad at typing sometimes. So we'll have the value. When we have loading, let's just start with this right here. Yeah. So when we have loading, we can return a scaffold with just a center and a circular progress indicator. That is just a progress indicator that is circular, as the name says. And if there is an error, right, we'll print, let's just print anything. Oops. Right, so we'll know there is some error. What issue you have? No provider scope. Oh, I saved by mistake. Right. Okay, so now when we have value, what we have to check, if value is null, or let's check if it's not null. If it's not null, of course we'll return the home page. Why do we do that? If it's not null, that means it's returning a user. If it's returning a user, that means someone is logged in already. Else, we will return the login page. Right? What are the issues here? I'll remove this. it needs to return something as well, so we'll just return the same thing. And let's just have a text here of oops. What is this? Okay, I did not typecast this, so this will return a user, right? That should be okay. Let's rerun the application once. Yeah, so as you can see, why did we come to the login page? Because we have actually not signed in till now. So I will just explain it to you once more. Once we have the connection state done, we'll go to the auth checker. Now in the auth checker, we have the auth state which we are watching using our provider, and when the auth state is loading or when it has an error, so it will show either a circular progress indicator if it is loading. If it has error, it will show oops, neither of which was the issue here right now. Now when it has data, it will check if that data is null or the output of the data from the auth state is null. If it's null, that means the Firebase is not returning a user. So if it's not returning the user, it will go to the login page. If it is returning a user, that means someone is logged in, it will go to the home page. So for now, of course, I did not log in right now, so it went to the login page. Right, so now we can start to have the sign-in functionality implemented. So for that, first of all, we need to have a variable binded to the email and password. So one thing we can do, we can just have the email password variable right here in a string format, but the issue with that would be it's just not good. There are two things you can do. You can either make a controller, which I don't like to do personally. So second thing again, which if you are, I'm trying to teach you Riverpod, we can make a state provider and using that provide the variables for that. So let's make it here. So we'll call it new login provider. Login page providers. So we'll make final variable called email provider, and it will be a state provider, and it will return a string. Right, similarly we can make a password provider as well. Right, so now we can use it here. We can have our functions. So first of all, we have to make two functions that we will call right there. So it will be to update email, and it will be of type void. It will take the build context, and it will of course take the email. And here we can have the context dot read. Okay, so before using, one thing I forgot, before using any kind of provider or context right here, we have to do one thing. You have to make this a consumer widget again, because we're consuming a provider. and here we have to give a scope reader and call it watch, right? So now it will be okay. And let's call it email provider, and we will be reading its state and updating its state with email, right? And then similarly we'll make another function for the password. Here it will be the password provider now. Here it will be the password. Okay, and I have to call the state here, right? So we have two functions to update the values of email and password. Now here we will make the watch variables and we will watch these. Right. So now we can go to the unchanged value. I can directly call the function that we just made, which will be update email, and we already have the context here, and the email will have the same name. And for the password as well, we'll do the same thing. Okay, and we have to put value here. Yeah, update password value. Yep. So now in this, what we need to do is we need to get the auth services, and from that we have to get the sign in function. So we have to watch that as well here. So we'll have an auth variable. So auth services provider, we don't have to watch the state, it's not a state provider. And here we will call okay, we don't have to ask the auth state provider, we have to call the auth services provider. Is that right? That is what I named it, auth services provider. Right, now there will be no issue here. Yeah, so we have the sign in, and now here it will have the email and then the password, right? So we have this. Now we can reload this. Let's check. Yeah, so now I restarted. Now we can have a login here. So let's just make let's just go to our Firebase console and make a user there by default. So yeah, now we have to enable email and password type. We'll just using the email and password for this tutorial. Everything else can be done in the same way. You have to put all of those functions just in the authentication services, and you have to call those like how I just did. So we have done this. We can just add a user. So we just made a random email and password. So test@gmail.com and test123, and we'll add this user here. Now we can check it. Let's reload this once. Yeah. So now let's type it here. test@gmail.com and then test123. Let's try. Yeah, so as you can see, we are now at the home page and we did not actually navigate to it. What happened was the state of the authentication changed. We had a user now, and thus from the home page, from the main here, as you can see, this value is not null now. So since it was a stream, now we went to the home page without navigating anywhere, right? So now all that's left is just to implement the sign out, which is very easy. So let's go to the home page, make it a consumer widget, have a scope reader here called watch, and let's have the auth variable here, which will be the provider watch of auth states provider. Actually, you have to sign out, right? So auth services provider, and here all we have to do is just go auth dot sign out, and that's about it. So by the way, now we are logged in. The next time we reload the app or reopen the application, we'll come to the home page again because the state is saved, right? See, as you can see, it reloaded and it came back to this state only. Now we can sign out here, and as soon as we sign out, we come back to the login screen. Now if we reload, we won't go back to the home page so long so we do not sign in again. Yeah, that blue dot is actually a circular progress indicator. I think I'll have to give it a container for it to show properly. So we'll just sign in again just to check it if everything is working well. Yeah, so as you can see, so we signed in again and then sign out. We came back here again. So this was how you do the authentication in a clean way. Now you have the auth services, now you have the auth provider, also you have the login provider. So all of these are separate. So you have our data fields separate, the UI are separate. So this was the scope of this tutorial. If you liked it, please do give a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you need more such videos. If you need more videos on Riverpod or any such videos, please do give me a feedback in the comments below. Thank you so much.